There's been this recent trend on the subreddit where we draw to varying levels of quality our favorite characters for each element in Genshin Impact. And that's what I want to talk about today. This will be a little bit different to like a who's the most fun video, and it's certainly going to be a lot different to like, who's the strongest, who's the most meta. Because when it comes to figuring out my favorite characters, obviously it's purely subjective, but at the same time, I feel like there's a few criteria that I would be using to basically figure it out. We talk about characterization. I tend to like characters that actually have something interesting to say. We want to talk about personality. There isn't a specific flavor of, let's say, happy-go-lucky or super depressed edgelord that I prefer personally, but I do like characters who at least have something in that regard. We also want to talk about story. I like characters who are also relevant to the overall story of Genshin, especially if they're potentially very relevant in the grand scheme of things. And then finally, of course, there's drip, because obviously they have to look nice. If you like this kind of content, please consider supporting the channel by subscribing. An effort is just around the corner, and I am going to grab her, like I mentioned before, so if you want to be notified of the latest videos about her, you can also ring that bell icon. Now, without further ado, let's get into each element one by one. Anemo is probably my least favorite element when it comes to the characters as opposed to the gameplay. Now, I don't know what it is about the Anemo cast, but I don't really feel any particularly strong interest in any of them. With that being said, though, I do kind of like Venti for how sus he is and how he's probably actually Istaroth, either a small part of her or at least Istaroth in a new Samsara, I guess. I think Scary Memes has had some really interesting character arcs going on, from antagonist to tragic past to recovering student, and of course his tampering of Ermin's soul was an absolutely crazy move. Also, Bros and not cry for some reason, which was unexpected, but yeah, I guess it does make perfect sense. I really also like Aoife, but rather I'd really like Kukuku. No way, bro. But at probably the end of the day, not by any real margin, my favorite Anemo character is gonna have to be Shen Yun. First off, she's hot. Secondly, she's a mom trying to take care of her kids, including potentially Razor. We'll just have to see if that turns out to be the case. And one must be greatly appreciative of how one speaks. Whilst I am leaving this mostly out of the considerations, it definitely also helps that her gameplay out of all of the Anemo characters is probably the most impactful. Unlike Anemo, there are a few clear choices for me with regards to the Geo cast. Zhongli is of course the OG king of drip, still rocking one of the nicest suits in the game. His Archon War hoodie outfit is also immaculate. Noelle was, and forever will be the strongest maid in the game. Not even an effort can stop her. We don't get enough of Noelle in the story though. Getting her 2 hangouts is great, but when can she finally be a knight, Jean? And when that happens, is that going to be a mandatory interlude or something? Hoyoverse? I love Union for bringing more appreciation of Chinese opera to the Western world. I think that makes her really, really cool. I think Navi has one of the best stories in the game when it comes to character stories at the very least, and it helps that she is also one of the first few characters to use guns. And I really like Shilinen because, to me, she feels like one of the realest people around. Her story quest revolves around her calling people out on their nonsense and melodrama, and I'm including Moeka. She calls her out on her nonsense in that particular event. All that being said, to this day, I think my favorite Geo character is still the big boss, Ningguang. The only correct answer to which 4-star should be upgraded to a 5-star. Ningguang is arguably one of the most powerful humans in the game because of how she basically runs the economy of Liyue, and Liyue is kind of like the Wall Street of Teyvat. And I really like how she was proactive in defending Liyue. No problem dropping the first Jade Chamber on Osile. Then she listened to the observations of the sea by her definite girlfriend Beidou and immediately organized and funded the construction of a new Jade Chamber with the potential of dropping it on Based, and then actually started from humble beginnings, but of course now she's here. I hope we get to see more of her in the future, because as the Tianchuan of the Liyue Qi Xing, Ningguang holds the potential to be able to organize some kind of diplomatic arrangement with other nations, or even use the entirety of Liyue's resources with the help of other Qi Xing members like Kating to fight against whatever might come out of the ley lines, etc, etc. When Sumeru first released, we started getting an absolute smorgasbord of different kinds of Dendro characters, and I feel like between the new element being released and the seemingly improved writing, I really like everyone. I like Tiglani's no-nonsense attitude and how he quickly picked up that Nahida was inside Catherine's mind, and he didn't just start fangirling as soon as he realized that he was talking to the Archon. I feel like he also has one of the most colorful yet not jarring outfits in the game as well, so that's really cool. I really like Alhaitham and his concocting of a multi-stage plan involving a lot of characters in different fields working together to save Nahida. And I think Baiju's story is incredibly deep and interesting, seeking immortality not for power, but for the compassionate reason of saving people from a contract with Changsheng that would ultimately take their life. I feel like there's quite a lot to explore with Baizhu in the future. But when it comes to who my favorite Dendro character is, I mean, come on, it's obvious, surely. It's gotta have to be the same answer as everyone else, unless your name is, of course, Grand Sage Azar at the time. Of course, it's Nahida. One of the most tragic stories in all of Genshin, yet still able to, after all this time, return to being a very cheerful girl. Also, more than happy to be part of the same academia that had imprisoned her for 500 years. She's actively working inside the academia to figure things out, so I feel like that's really cool. Because at the end of the day, Nahida doesn't seek vengeance, she actually seeks a better tomorrow. And hell, she's even opened up to teaching resources for the people of the desert. I like that. I think that makes her a wonderful person. And then on top of that, you know, she's also friends with the Aranara, she's also friends now with the Pari. Yeah, she's the Dendro Archon. She's one of the coolest characters in the game. She's also adopted scary memes, which I find to be absolutely unfathomably adorable because of like how she's basically scary memes is like adoptive mother now. And we finally celebrated her birthday in one of the best events in the game. On top of that, I would argue that Nahida is one of the most powerful characters in the story, not because she's omega strong like someone like Mawika, but because number one, she can read minds in Sumeru, number two, she's the god of wisdom, and number three, and this is the most important thing, she has open and ready access to Ermin's soul, which, as we know, can alter memories, which in turn essentially erase an entire identity or even reality from existence, replacing it with something that isn't terribly different, but a change significant enough to matter. At the end of the day, if I were given the choice, I would always choose to protect Nahida, not just to protect her smile, but also because to incur her wrath would literally not be something people can walk away from and tell the story of. Okay, let's first address the elephant in the room. Of course, my favorite Cryo character in Genshin is, was, and until otherwise, always will be Aloy. Thing is, I love Aloy for a variety of reasons, all of which are in the two Horizon games. Hoyo is of course contractually obligated not to give her anything else. No story, no constellations, nothing. Just something for her birthday and of course a few other rare things like party intro animations. So putting her aside, I once again find myself not that interested in an entire Elements cast. Layla does have something interesting with that sleepwalking dissociative identity thing that she's got going on. I kind of wish we would see more of that and maybe explore a little bit further. Rosaria does also have that kind of no-nonsense attitude that I've mentioned earlier that I like, and I do actually like how Escoffia has been portrayed, especially in her story quest, and of course during her ult when she yells, "Goes on the loose!" But I think for the time being, my other favorite Cryo character would be Skirk. The main reason is that she's the first playable Outworlder after Aloy, and since she's not contractually obligated to not be relevant for the rest of the story, I am in fact super intrigued to see what ramifications come from having her around. She's probably not even registered in Urban Soul now that I think about it, and then of course there's the relationship between her, Tortellini, and Cetology the Foul. It also helps that her gameplay is actually super smooth, despite the fact that she's actually rather team restrictive. I actually like quite a lot of the Pyro cast, some for gameplay reasons and some for reasons that I've outlined early on. But I was quite enamored by Xinyan's upbringing and her story of rebelling against the choking whims and wishes of her family and neighborhood. I think we all enjoyed when the Hire told Paimon to shut the hell up that one time. I also like the contradictory nature of her being an eremite warrior but also needing to keep up her appearance as part of her job, and we do get to see another side of her, like when she's shopping with or shopping for juniors. And Chevreuse probably had one of the greatest character introductions in the game, especially for a 4-star, and of course she does in fact have a gun. But of course, the two Pyro on-fielders that I still regularly play are also my two favorite Pyro characters overall, Arlecchino and Mawika. I, contrary to a lot of people it seems, really like how Mawika is portrayed in the story. She is an actual leader. She had a plan, she executed the plan worked. Mawika was also the most present Archon that we've actually ever seen. We also get to see some of the funniest sides to Mawika, like how she could eat an entire meal for 5 as breakfast, yet still she gets cooked by the Varessa challenge. And even to this day, I still like the Mawika motorcycle. it generally hasn't bothered me one bit. But I think in the totality of what we have and the potential of what's to come, I feel like Mawika's story has reached a pause for the time being, but Arlecchino, on the other hand, I think there's enough mystery and unresolved points left that has elevated her just a little bit above Mawika as my favorite Pyro character. We've got things like her relationship with the Crimson Moon and the story of Perrin Harry. Project Stuja? What in the hell is that? She's still a Fatui Harbinger, and we know that Colombina, Sandrone, hell, even the Doctor and Piero are all hulling it not cry. Is Father going to be there? We'll just have to see. And then of course there's these visual analogs that she has with Renova, the Shade of Death, red VFXs, crosses, her demo at least features some red ass eyes, and of course she uses a scythe, hello? Ember Fire remains as probably one of my most favorite songs coming out of Genshin. Her backstory is short, it's easily one of the best as well, and I really look forward to seeing what kind of shenanigans Arlecchino ends up getting into soon. Unlike most of the other elements, Hydro is a relatively easy one. I like some of the characters for gameplay reasons, but the two that stand out for other reasons are of course going to be Neuvillette and Furina. Furina has the other most devastating story of all time. How she has bounced back after an extended break, of course, going from Archon, quote unquote, to now stage and film director is... I actually find that to be rather inspiring. Whilst I think her story has in fact reached a conclusion, I am really looking forward to seeing more of her someday in the future. In a similar vein to the intrigue of Arlecchino though, I think my favorite Hydro character is going to have to be Neuvillette. I love his wholesome relationship with the Melusines and Sigvin as well. I really like his back and forth with Furina and his continuing professional relationship with her these days, and I think we all enjoyed that one time when he said,
"We now turn to the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale."
TikTok. You...
According to the judgment of the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale.
Am I right?
The judgment of the Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinale is not guilty.
What?
But of course, the big thing with Neuvillette is that he is now the first and currently only playable Dragon Sovereign. This also makes him one of the most powerful characters around. He also has an unfathomable hate boner for the Archons, except Nahida, of course. Will he bump into any of them? Will that start a war? We'll just have to find out. And of course, will he ever bring out his true form? Actually, come to think of it, does he have a true form? I'm not 100% sure about that. Let me know in the comments what you feel about that. Do we actually have confirmation and or denial of that? All of this to say, I like Neuvillette, not just because of his rather brain-dead gameplay, which is also hilariously meta for the better part of a year, but I also like him as a person. I think a big part of that is also thanks to his voice acting as well. He's just such a gentle soul despite being ludicrously strong. And finally, Electro. Oh boy. Which Electro characters do you like, Kate? Folks who have been part of this community for a while know now that the answer is basically yes. I find General Kujo-Sara's rigid attitude to everything to be very in line with who she is, which is all the more hilarious when she flusters and drops all pretense at the sight of her beloved Shogun. And you know what? I see myself a lot in her personality because we're both massive Shogun sips. Speaking of the almighty Narukami Ogosho God of Thunder, the Raiden Shogun herself, A, of course I love A. I reckon, from a pure power level perspective, A is probably the strongest character in the game before we start talking about either Nahida deleting her from Irminsul or we start bringing up the shades. I reckon A can take on Neuvillette and Mawika one-on-one. Fight me on that. I reckon she can take him. Will they ever fight? I know Neuvillette has spoke for the Narukami, but I don't think Mawika really ever cares that much. But then again, we do get to see another side of A, which is quite sweet and wholesome because we also have her unending eternal love of desserts and of course light novels from the Yai publishing house. Come on, my Shogun cannot possibly be this kawaii. But she is. Okay, I also want to mention Dori. First off, she has the best Japanese voice acting in the game. By far, it's not even a question. Secondly, I actually like how she's one of, I think, the very few select playable characters who has never demonstrated any kind of interest in any meaningful capacity with the Traveler. Neither any romantic or even semi-romantic. Hell, I don't even think Dory calls the Traveler friend. We are at best a client of Dory's. I never get the distinction that we are quote-unquote friends. In fact, I find that to be really interesting and also somewhat unique, so I hope we get to see more of Dory later on. And of course, she's always a hilarious money-sick demon, which makes her so very memorable even if we don't necessarily think about her all that often. I also really like Cloran. The Cloran story quest is easily one of my most favorite story quests of all time, and it would be a highlight for any D&D nerds amongst us as well. I really like the exploration and resolution of her relationship with Navia. Obviously, she ended up killing Navia's father, spoiler alert, but she was also there to provide some key information in order to restore his name. And of course, Cloran is still, by my estimation, the most fun character in the game because, say it with me, gun. I also like Sethos, mainly for gameplay reasons, but I thought his part of the Seno story quest was also quite well done. And then of course, I really like Veressa and Iansan, but of course for these two characters, it is mainly for gameplay reasons. That being said though, I actually think that Iansan might be one of the better written characters, not just in the story, but also in just the game in general, because of how her kid actively relates to her job as a personal trainer. I feel like there's not that many characters who have that kind of distinction. Maybe Karara? But yeah, think about what Iansan is all about and how she is actually a personal trainer. And then the Veressa story quest is obviously one of the funniest and most psychedelic experiences in the game. But this should come as no surprise to anyone who has been with this channel long enough, because obviously at the end of the day, my two most favorite Electro characters, and incidentally my two most favorite characters point blank, are Lisa and Yai Miko. Obviously, they're still the two most attractive women in the game, and it's not even close. It's not even close. The illustrious in the extreme, her royal sass Yai Miko is also hard carried by her incredible personality. And that's why I recognize that she's not really for everyone, because she's way too sass, but she does have an incredible confidence in her life that she would even call out the Shogun, her own god, for basically chucking a tantrum. Like, did you even do the quest? She's basically out here saying, oh my god, I can't believe A is being a little baby bitch. On top of that, I really like her gameplay, that gorgeous alt animation, right here, right now, emerged. There's reasons why she has the most constellations out of my event 5-star characters. I wonder if there's more to her story in the future, because she is the Lady Kitsune and the familiar of the Shogun, so she does seem to possess quite an immense power that even allows her to force herself into the plane of Euthymia during the war simply via an Omamori. We'll just have to see if she's later calling upon that power to pop off with that spiritual resource that she has. Meanwhile, in Mondstadt, my favorite Electro character by a little bit, and thus my favorite character overall, is got to be, of course, my wife, my lover, my life, Lisa. She is wildly smart. She is, of course, graduating the top of her class in the academia, one of the best students that her mentor Cyrus ever had. And on top of that, she also has the wisdom to leave the academia after seeing what endless study could do to someone. She's also very knowledgeable in potion making via the potion making event that was kind of goated, and then on top of that we also get resource refunds if we actually make potions with her. I also love the dichotomy in her personality. This is a woman who will spend all the time and resources to create the best cauldron in the universe and then use it exclusively to easy brew tea. And then, of course, she was also potentially able to become Grand Master of the Knights of Avonius, and this would have been easy for her. And what does she do? She actively denies it. She actively declines it multiple times, because that's just basically who she is. She's wildly powerful, but she doesn't want any of the responsibility. I feel that in my soul. And she's also wildly sus. Her constellation, first off, is an hourglass. What's up with that? She's also one of the only surviving characters to be actively called a witch of Purple Rose, yet not part of the Hexen Circle. I'm pretty sure she was approached by Alice and friends, but I'm not 100% sure about that. And then, of course, we also have to talk about The Princess and the Six Pygmies. Do you remember the book that we were given by Lisa at the end of the Lisa story quest? It's a fairy tale book, which we now know is a medium that can be used to dodge Irminsul erasure of memories by hiding them in allegories within the fairy tale. The Abyss Mage that was in the Lisa story quest seemed oddly super keen on what is essentially a children's fairy tale. What's up with that? On top of that, 6 Pygmies. Guess what? We now have, at the end of the Fontaine Archon quest, 6 Archons left. What's up with that, hey? Look, Someone has also put together a smorgasbord of suspicious things about Lisa, and apparently at some point Lisa could interpret forbidden knowledge, which I have no idea what the basis for that claim is, but Sasuga Lisa-sama, I guess if forbidden knowledge were to break out of containment somehow, Lisa would be the one who could handle it. All of this to say, I am really hoping we get to explore more about Lisa soon. I feel like Nodcry might be the perfect opportunity to get into something crazy huge, but you know, we don't know. There's nothing to indicate that Lisa's going to be a part of it, but we'll just have to see. If not then probably after the Sarita has attacked Celestia or whatever she's doing, then Lisa's going to have to start popping off with whatever it is that she knows. Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. Who are your favorites? Obviously this is all pure subjective, so talk about the ones you like, talk about why you like them, like, you know, go into as much detail as you want. There are no wrong answers here, because we're talking about the characters we like. Some people might like characters you don't like, that's okay. Some people are not going to like the characters you like, that's okay as well. It's all pure subjective, folks. Alright, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Genshin Impact action, and I'll do next time. I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Let us dance, my dearest!
Try to remember the steps this time. Strike a pose! My will embodied.
I thought I had it memorized.
Let the world collide! Do your master's bidding. Breaking news!
It is time to slay our foes with blood all might.
This calls for some pomp and ceremony.
Good lord, where were we?
Hold that pose! Let my name echo in song! Take your true form! Cryo incarnate!
Power is immense!
Just don't get stuck in the barrel! The final act is upon us!